Hello and welcome back to Diddy on Trial from the BBC World Service YouTube channel with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. Every week we're here bringing you the latest news and the updates on the upcoming P. Diddy trial in May. Reminder, Diddy has been charged with sex trafficking, racketeering with conspiracy and transportation for prostitution. He denies all the charges. He entered a not guilty plea and says he's never sexually assaulted anyone, man or woman, adult or minor. In today's episode, the woman known as Diddy's right-hand woman, Kristina Khorram, or KK, has responded to the multiple allegations against her. She says, "I have never condoned or aided and abetted the sexual assault of anyone, nor have I ever drugged anyone." And Tony Buzbee, the Texas trial lawyer who claimed to have over 150 cases that he could bring to court against P. Diddy, has withdrawn from 15 cases in the Southern District of New York. Helping me unpack this all today is our resident criminal defense attorney, Shaun. Hi, Shaun.
Hey guys, how are y'all doing?
And Rolling Stone's senior investigative reporter, Cheyenne Roundtree. Hi, Cheyenne.
Hi, good morning.
So first of all, this is the first time we've spoken about Kristina Khorram on the podcast. If you're deep in the Diddy world, you've probably seen her name crop up a few times. If you were following him on social media beforehand, you would have seen that he's posted about her before. She was his chief of staff. Cheyenne, what does that actually mean? Because it's sounding very presidential.
I mean, it kind of was. Diddy has multiple businesses, and she kind of oversaw the inner workings of his personal life and his business life. So she was kind of, when we say number two at the company of, Diddy, that was KK.
And he's spoken about her before. He's called her his soul sister?
Yeah, they were really, really close. I mean, she's worked with him since 2013, and she says now that she's left. She says former boss in her statement, but they were very, very close. They spent a lot of time together.
And we've got posts from him on Facebook in 2021 saying, "She's been my right hand for the past 8 years. Don't know how I'd function without her." So they're close personally. And then on the business side of things as well. What do we know about her since these allegations have come out? You mentioned that she's referred to him as her former boss. What else do we know?
Yeah, so since KK has been kind of roped into this, because she was Diddy's right-hand woman, she's kind of not been really seen too much. I mean, there was pictures of Diddy the day that after he settled Cassie's lawsuit. He's like, the pictures of him are outside his Miami house. He's looking really stressed. And there's a woman there in a robe next to him. That's KK. But really, since that moment, we haven't seen too much of her. And she's been named in 3 lawsuits, one by a former producer who worked with Diddy on the Love album, a former executive assistant, Phil Pines, who we've spoken about at length on this podcast, and then a woman called Ashley Parham, who is in San Francisco. So she has not really been saying too much of anything until now.
Yeah, people were speculating that she'd gone missing because she did have public-facing profiles on social media, but those seem to have been wiped and her LinkedIn deleted. Now, Cheyenne, you've got a response from her. People have been reaching out to her for months and months trying to get a response. What has she said to you about her involvement or lack of involvement?
Yeah, so in a statement given to me at Rolling Stone, KK basically said that she's been dealing for months with these really awful allegations, and they're causing her family harm. They're causing her harm. And she definitively says, "I've never condoned or abated and abetted the sexual assault of anyone, nor have I drugged anyone." And she basically says that these allegations are heinous and disturbing, and that she looks forward to clearing her name.
Shaun, we've had 2 superseding indictments now, and she hasn't been added on as a co-defendant. Is there a possibility that she may have gone in and given her own evidence to maybe, if she had done something wrong, and she could take a plea deal there?
There's a possibility. Do I believe it's realistic? Probably not, mostly based upon her statement, because her statement is a very, very strong denial. And if the prosecutors were going to meet with her and put her on the stand, you would assume her statement would have been so bold as, "I've never done anything wrong whatsoever," because it was open her up for cross-examinations. And why did you lie in the statement? And now you're lying on the stand. And that's just my gut reaction.
And we haven't really covered what she's been accused of in these 3 different civil lawsuits. So Lil Rod is a producer who was working with Diddy in the Love Off the Grid album that came out 2022. She was accused early in a lawsuit from him, which was filed for $30 million. Basically, he says, quote, as a heterosexual Christian man, Mr. Jones was uncomfortable with Mr. Combs's advances. So he says that Diddy was making sexual advances towards him without his consent. And Mr. Jones expressed his discomfort to Mr. Combs's chief of staff, Kristina Khorram, who responded to Mr. Jones's complaint with, Shaun will be Shaun. And there are other allegations along the same nature of sort of placating people's frustration, upset, discomfort, and saying, oh, well, that's just how he shows love. That's what he does. And those are in that lawsuit. Now, Diddy denies all the allegations in Lil Rod's civil lawsuit, but we see similar allegations put forward by Phil Pines in his civil lawsuit as well, saying that when he went to Kristina with concerns about the way people were being treated or violence that he'd witnessed from Diddy towards a woman, that she said, well, don't speak about that again. So, Shaun, are they not sort of corroborating once again, is that not corroboration in full conduct of somebody who seems to be keeping a lid on bad goings on?
Yes and no, because remember, anybody can bring a lawsuit. Anybody can make allegations that they want to. And so they are, in a way, corroborating each other's lawsuits by facts, but there is no independent evidence corroborating what they're saying. So it'd be like, I could bring a lawsuit today and say she did the same thing to me and Diddy's did the same thing. So technically it's corroborating, but it's just me. It could also be me just parroting things that other people have said.
I should say that Diddy echoes this in his responses. He says, as we've repeatedly said, it's unfortunate that anyone can file a complaint, even without any proof. No matter how many lawsuits are filed, it won't change the fact that Mr. Combs has never sexually assaulted or sex trafficked anyone, man or woman, adult or minor. Fortunately, a fair and impartial judicial process exists to separate fact from fiction, and Mr. Combs is confident that he will prevail in court. I did want to pick up on one element, though, that Mr. Jones, Lil Rod, goes into, saying that Diddy would sort of run around with no clothes on or start to undress, and Kristina would immediately excuse herself and leave. Cheyenne, can you fill in a little bit of what he's kind of alleging there?
Yeah, so Little Rod, and based on sources I've spoken with, is that, Diddy treated his personal life like business. There was no kind of separation of church and state. And so in some instances, Diddy apparently would be taking meetings from his bathroom and would get into the shower and still talk to people. But Little Rod is saying Kristina would then remove herself. And so kind of like this, I guess what he seems to be implying is that she knew that maybe this was a little bit, untraditional. She doesn't want to see her boss naked, so she leaves, but other people are expected to stay there and, continue on talking with Diddy about music or business or whatever. So that's kind of what he seems to be trying to paint a picture of.
Shaun, if she did absent herself, how might that work in her defense?
That is such a great question, because there's a difference between state system and federal system. And in the state system, you can claim ignorance, but in the federal system, there's something called willful blindness, which means if you willfully do this and are hiding, they can still prosecute you for it. So if you, like exactly what you said, you can willfully blind yourself, and that's something that the federal prosecutors will tell a jury that, nah, she knew what was going on, or knew or should have known what's going on. So yeah, she can't extricate herself from the situation and think that absolves all liability. She still would be in trouble if they chose to charge her under that scenario.
And earlier this week, Judge J. Paul Ertkin in New York looked at this lawsuit from Lil Rod as Shaun Combs has asked for it to be dismissed. The judge granted Combs' request in part, dismissing the allegation of RICO against Combs and Khorram, as well as negligent and intentional infliction of emotional distress claims, breach of contract claims, and the Trafficking Victims Protection Act claims against Combs Global. However, he refused to dismiss the TVPA, Trafficking Victims Protection Act, claims against Khorram and Combs, as well as sexual assault and liability claims. Judge Ertkin also gave a warning to Lil Rod's lawyer, Tyrone Blackburn, saying, quote, his filings are replete with inaccurate statements of law, conclusory accusations, and inappropriate attacks on opposing counsel. We asked Tyrone Blackburn for his response, and he sent us this. I respect the judge's opinion. We view this as a win. Defendants wanted a total dismissal and they failed to get it. Shaun Combs and KK, as in Kristina Khorram, are both facing civil TVPA claims, and we get to begin discovery. I know where all the bodies are buried, and I have a huge, in capital letters, shovel. Time to start digging. We've reached out to Kristina Khorram or KK multiple times for a comment and she hasn't responded, but she has now given a statement. She says, for months, horrific accusations have been made about me in various lawsuits regarding my former boss. These false allegations of my involvement are causing irreparable and incalculable damage to my reputation and the emotional well-being of myself and my family. I've never condoned or aided and abetted the sexual assault of anyone, nor have I ever drugged anyone. The idea that I could be accused of playing a role in or even being a bystander to the rape of anyone is beyond upsetting, disturbing and unthinkable. That is not who I am, and my heart goes out to all the victims of sexual assault. I'm confident that the allegations against me will be proven to be untrue. Should we assume that she's been subpoenaed by the grand jury? I mean, she'd have been one of my first calls. I'd have been like, well, you're his soul sister. You're his right-hand woman.
One would think, and that's something that people need to understand, is a lot of times, and I was a prosecutor, what we end up doing is, and maybe this is just assumptions, maybe they met with her, maybe they talked to her, and then they said, you know what, we cannot prosecute this case beyond a reasonable doubt, as opposed to the civil standard, which is more likely than not. So both things, so a lot of folks are saying, well, they didn't go after her criminally, which means her civil case isn't true. Well, both things can be independently true. A civil case is brought if it's more likely than not that something happened. To prosecute her criminally or make her a co-conspirator, it must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And prosecutors possibly could have met with her, maybe believed her story. Maybe they thought the willful blindness claim would have been too hard to prosecute and said, we're not going after her. Possibly. Or possibly they think she didn't do anything, or they couldn't prove it. There's so many things that could have gone into it. But that is a very strong denial. And that's why I don't believe she is going to be a witness based upon that denial and that denial alone.
Well, she's saying she didn't aid or abet any crimes. But should we read anything into the fact that she hasn't said, and Diddy's innocent? I never ever saw him do any of these things, and I was around him all the time.
Yeah, we can read into it. She's not stupid. That's something you don't want to go out on that ledge and make the government that angry with you. And that would be going out to a very strong ledge. And at some point in time, if she has any representation, they're saying you need to worry about yourself. Do not go out on the ledge for anybody else because, your words come back and haunt you. Let's say he gets convicted. Then all of a sudden, for the rest of time, there's a statement of you saying Diddy's innocent and the people don't want to deal with you at all. So, yeah, I would have advised her not to talk about him in the slightest.
It was May 12th. We've got those opening statements. If she is giving evidence, if she's called as a witness, if she's in the room, we will let you know when the trial begins. Next, we need to talk about Tony Buzbee. Tony Buzbee is our Texas trial lawyer who said he had over 150 cases or claims that he could bring to court against Diddy. He stood in front of that 1-800 number in October of 2024 and said, if you've been sexually assaulted by this man or you have evidence, please call us and we're looking to represent them, not as a class action, but each individual lawsuit. As we know, he's filed a lot of cases since then, civil claims. One of them is by an anonymous man who's using the pseudonym John Doe. He's accused Diddy of sexual assault. Diddy denies the allegations. But it's within this case, the judge presiding over that specific case, Judge Abrams, has said, wait a minute, you're filing a case in the Southern District of New York and you're not admitted to practice here. In a letter, Judge Abrams goes on to say, moreover, although Mr. Buzbee was warned several weeks ago in a parallel case that this conduct violated local civil rule 1.3, he failed to bring this issue to the court's attention. So, Shaun, does that mean somebody else told you that you're doing this and this is wrong, and then you didn't come over here and tell us? So you purposefully kept it from us, or is this a crime?
It's not a crime, but it's so damn stupid. It should be. The easiest way to describe it, so people get confused. Just because you're licensed to practice law in America, you can't practice law in every state. We've got different states, different laws, different jurisdictions, so they're all different. So once you take the bar, you are licensed to be a lawyer. Then you can practice in a state where you take the bar. Then after you've taken the bar in that state and you practice, let's say, and it happens to us a lot, let's say a buddy of yours calls you in Georgia and says, I want you to try this case with me or help me with this case. Well, you don't want to take the bar exam again because it's an incredibly hard, arduous test that you don't want to do again. But what you can do is do what's called pro hoc vici. All that means is for this matter only. That is literally the definition of it. Pro hoc vici means for this matter. And it is a ministerial function. You fill out a piece of paper, you get your buddy who's a lawyer in that jurisdiction to say, I vouch for Mr. Kent to practice law with me in Georgia. He knows the laws. You give that application to a clerk or to the judge. The judge simply asks you in some way, there is an application, whether it's on purpose. Have you read the law? Do you understand the law? Can you practice law here and not embarrass yourself? Yes. And then the judge signs off of it. That is literally as simple as Buzbee would have had to do to be licensed. And his would have been easier because he's already licensed in the state of New York. So he has his license there. This is just like a subset of New York, and he's already licensed also in the Eastern District of New York, if I'm not mistaken. And so it would have been so easy to easily fill out an application. What this is the equivalent of is everybody in the courtroom is just mad because he didn't follow the simplest step possible.
He said in his response, in a letter in response to Judge Abrams, quote, I made an error in judgment by failing to inform you that I was not admitted to the Southern District. I now seek to remedy this error by withdrawing my representation of the plaintiff in this matter, pending the resolution of my admission to this court. As an attorney, like you say, in good standing of the New York State Bar, the Texas State Bar, and your sister district, the Bar for the Eastern District of the state of New York, I believe I am eminently qualified and should not be precluded from representing the plaintiff in this action. At this time, however, my admission status has become a distraction that has shifted the focus of the matter away from where it should be, which is securing justice for the plaintiff. Plaintiff will continue to be represented by the remaining counsel of record from Curis Law as I sort these issues out.
The other thing that makes it ridiculous, like he makes this big press conference or release that says, I'm withdrawing from the representation of this individual. And I think even the court sent a little stamp on their thing that said, how can you withdraw for something you were not representing to begin with? That's like me saying, I am now withdrawing from being the president of the United States. Well, Mr. Kent, you were never the president of the United States. There's no need to withdraw. I think when you and Cheyenne originally talked way back in the day, I said I had a problem with him bringing all of these lawsuits. So if I'm a legitimate victim who's bringing these claims and I'm seeing my lawyer stumble his way around something that simple, it gives me pause. If I'm a jury watching this, it gives me pause. If I'm Diddy's lawyers, it gives me pause. It's just a bad look.
Yeah, and like you mentioned there, these different cases, civil and federal, they've been playing out in the court of public opinion. Cheyenne, Buzbee is a big character. He made himself a central character to this P. Diddy story that's taking place. What has the response been to this online?
A big reason why we're here, why he withdrew from these cases, all stems from his fight with Jay-Z. Jay-Z's team filed like some type of motion, I think, Shaun, like basically Jay-Z's the camp that like took it to the court and waved it around. And so this is all fallout from that. So it is kind of crazy that the whole Jane Doe, Jay-Z kind of saga there is impacting the rest of his cases with Diddy. And so I reached out to Tony Buzbee, and he basically said until that administration issue is sorted out, they're still pursuing these cases against Diddy. But it has become a little bit of a sideshow about administrative issues that normally we never really pay attention to or really understand, but it could have potentially big consequences in the rest of these cases.
Like you mentioned, well, with the Jay-Z case, which was then dismissed with prejudice, and we've covered that in previous episodes, they sort of raised the flag saying he's not admitted to practice in the Southern District of New York. So it is interesting that it's the fallout from that particular case. Shaun, you did mention this ages ago. Is there any way that this is going to impact his other cases? Because he hasn't just filed civil claims in the Southern District of New York. There are other places where he's permitted to practice, right?
Absolutely. I think what has ended up happening, and this is the danger of going against somebody with the power and financial resources of Jay-Z. What ended up happening is I'm sure his legal team looked for every possible mistake there was. And probably Buzbee has done this a million times. It's not that big of a deal. Probably other lawyers don't catch it. They're like, it's I guarantee you it's exactly what Buzbee said. I'm licensed in New York. I'm licensed in the Eastern District of New York. I'm going to end up licensed in Southern District of New York. It's not that big of a deal. And probably most folks won't count it. But when you're probably paying millions in legal fees, They found the smallest detail. They drove a truck through it, and it has affected him. Probably there's an assistant or somebody in his office currently getting cursed out because they didn't get that small little detail done. And yes, there's no doubt in my mind this detail will affect all of his other cases because of a credibility issue. And that's the problem with making yourself the face of these lawsuits and making this 1-800 number and making it about me rather than making it about the individual victims, because all of their credibility, whether they said a word or not, is all now getting called into question.
And of course, we'll continue to update you as that plays out. And then if he, what did you call it? Pro hac vice, if he does that.
Pro hac vice. It is a Latin phrase for this matter only. It's just to be used if you are not licensed or not allowed to practice in an area. You just get someone permission just to say, you know what, come on over for this matter only, because you are allowed to have any attorney you want. You know, as a person, you pick who you want. You shouldn't be forced. And so that's the point of this function, is allow somebody to come in for that specific matter only.
Well, if it looks like that's going to happen and then he gets readmitted, reassigned to the cases?
I don't think he will. I just don't think he will, because remember, you got to get the court's permission, and the court has basically signaled that they're not happy with him. And I think there's going to be issues coming to get it.
Is that just one judge, though? Would that apply to all 15 cases or just that particular case?
Remember what I said, it's for this matter only. So that's what it is, for this matter. So he would have to technically, for each of those cases, file a pro hac motion, because remember, Jay-Z's motion didn't throw all the cases out. It was just about his case. And so technically, you would have to tell the court each case you want to appear on and why. And he filed out none for any of them.
Well, we'll keep you updated on how that progresses. We asked Tony Buzbee if he'd like to comment any further on his withdrawal from these cases, and he hasn't got back to us yet. Finally, an update on John Pelletier, the current Maui police chief and one of the people named in the Ashley Parham civil lawsuit that we've been speaking about over the past couple of weeks. Pelletier had been asked to step down by the Maui mayor after his name was linked with the Parham case. He provided a file of evidence which he says proves he was not involved, and the police commission has accepted this, so he'll stay on in his role. Thank you both for joining me today. Shaun, it was lovely to see you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And Cheyenne, we'll be seeing you very soon.
Bye, thank you.
That's it for this episode of Diddy on Trial from the BBC World Service YouTube channel with me, Anoushka Mutanda-Dougherty. Don't forget to keep sending us your questions about the upcoming trial in May. You can get us on WhatsApp at +44 330 123 551. That's +44 330 123 551.